everyone. I'm going to be reading through my story that I wrote. It's called Turkey Trauma, and it is not a very serious story compared to some. So in this story there is no earthquake or tsunami or avalanche or climbing K2 mountain. Nobody is getting robbed at gunpoint. But it is something that was traumatizing or difficult for a member of my family. So as we go, we're going to stop and look at the verbs because our writing assignment focuses on using the correct form of the past tense. So in green, we have simple past. In blue, we have past perfect. In orange, we have past continuous or progressive. And then in green, we have one example of past perfect continuous or past perfect progressive. Okay? You need to review these verb tenses. Look at the other video where I go through those 4 tenses. So here we go. In our book it says what we should do first in the introduction is to set the setting. Now the setting of a story is where and when the story takes place. So it describes the environment. When it happens, the time of day, the time of year, the season, the specific place. Is it inside? Is it outside? What room? What is the weather like? All of those things are part of the setting. We also want to introduce the characters in the introduction. So in my story, the characters are people you know: Laura, Sophia, Talia, and Freya. Okay, here we go. So, sentence 1. On a bright, sunny morning in early September, Laura and her children encountered a surprise on their school commute. Commute is a journey to work or school. So here my subject is Laura and her children. That's my subject. What did they do? They encountered. This is simple past, and I use simple past if an event happened one time and is completed, or if it's a sequence or a past habit. So in this situation, it's one event that happened and it's completed. I use ed here because it's a regular verb. So on a bright sunny morning in early September, these are both prepositional phrases, and they both tell me when and the quality of the day. Laura and her children, subject, encountered what? A surprise. A surprise is the object on their school commute. So this tells me when. When did they encounter it? On their school's commute. So this is actually an adverbial phrase. Okay, Laura, 39, she's the first character. Sophia, 8, Talia, aged 4, and Freya, 3. If you just use a comma here, and I should have one here, that explains to the reader that that's the age of the people. So these characters were heading to classes in nearby Hudsonville and Zeeland in Laura's forest green colored 2011 Subaru Outback. So we have a lot of details here because the story actually takes place in the car. So we're heading to. What verb tense is that? I have the verb to be, and I have the verb ending in ing. So I know that it's past continuous or past progressive. I'm using was or were. Here were because it's plural. They were. And I end in ing. They were heading. So this is for an ongoing event or an event that was disrupted. And in this situation, I have a disrupted event. We were heading to classes in nearby Hudsonville, Zeeland, and then something is going to happen to us, and that is going to interrupt our driving. It's going to interrupt our morning commute. Fall had arrived in Michigan a few weeks earlier. Okay, so here I'm going to use what verb tense? I have the verb had, and then I have the past participle, which looks the same as the simple past because it's a regular verb and has ed. so I'm going to use the past perfect. This one here. So this one here, the past, I use had plus the participle, which often has ed, because it's a regular verb. So this is for events that happened before another event in the past. So before this event, before my morning drive, fall had arrived in Michigan. The trees had started already to turn fiery orange and red. So again, I'm describing the setting. I'm painting a picture for you in your mind. So as a reader, you can transport yourself into this situation. Weak sunlight danced between the leaves of the trees. So danced, ed, is going to be simple past. Okay? At this particular moment, this is what the sunlight was doing. Sunlight danced between the leaves of the trees, and the light mist hovered. So hovered is when you kind of move a little bit above the ground. Hovered, again, simple past, ed, because it's happening at a specific time in the past, and then it's going to stop, right? The sun comes up, the mist disappears. The mist hovered just above the ground. It was a beautiful morning, and I should have that one highlighted too. That simple past, oh goodness, of the verb to be, was and were, of the simple past of the verb to be. It was a beautiful morning. Laura and her husband had moved, is my verb. Verb tense, past perfect again. I have had, and then moved, past participle is regular. So had moved because it's something that had happened in the past, right? I'm living in West Michigan. So I moved before, at some earlier time. So Laura and her husband had moved to Ottawa County a few months prior, means before, and they were still adapting to their new routine. So I have the past perfect, past continuous here. Continuous because it's ing, and the verb to be. Past continuous because it's something that was ongoing, okay? They were adapting. It's not something that happens like that, right? Adapting takes a long time. So I have was and were and ing. So this is an ongoing event. They were still adapting to their new routine. Laura always drove, simple past, because it's a habit or routine, something that you do and it's finished. She always drove the children to school every morning, and that's an irregular verb, drive, drove. But as she maneuvered, so she maneuvers, she moves the car, again, simple past, she did it once, it's finished, down the long driveway through the woods to the main road, she had no idea that something unexpected was about to occur. All right, so I've got was, simple past, had, simple past. You excited yet? Hope so. Okay, the children were happily singing along to Old MacDonald. Okay, so past continuous here. They were singing when something is going to happen. It's an ongoing event. Were singing, ing. Singing along to Old MacDonald had a farm when Sophia shouted. So Sophia shouting is the event that interrupts. They were singing and Sophia shouted. Stop the singing. So simple past. What's that? She pointed, simple past, happened one time, she did it, towards a large flock of birds. A flock is a group of birds. They were emerging, ongoing activity, right? You don't do that quickly like that. They were emerging slowly over a few minutes. That means coming out of the woods. They were coming out. They were emerging from the woods. Freya looked out the window, simple past, looked out the window and opened her mouth in horror. She took, simple past, irregular, one look at the birds' sharp beaks and beady black eyes and screamed. Okay, so So these are events that happen one after the other after the other. She looked, she opened, she took, she screamed. What are they? Inquired Sophia, interested in the sight of the mass marching creatures. Again, ED, simple past. Just wild turkeys, replied Laura with a reassuring tone. So here we have the conflict. The conflict or the problem is there's a flock of turkeys walking across the road. So that's going to cause a problem for us getting to school, and it might cause an emotional problem for one of my children. So here in the story, I'm past the introduction, and it's mostly going to be in simple past because we have actions. One thing happened, then another thing happened, then another thing happened. So this is usually in simple past. Just wild turkeys, replied Laura with a reassuring tone. What are they doing on the road? Demanded Talia, ED, simple past. Crossing, Laura answered. Laughing to herself, she said, simple past, irregular, why did the turkey cross the road? Because it was the chicken's day off. Sophia giggled. But Freya began, irregular verb, she began to scream even louder. Her fear increased with every bird she saw. Laura had to, these are all simple past, Laura had to make a decision. How could she make sure that her children developed a healthy interest in and respect for the natural world? She decided that they needed to confront Freya's fears head on. So simple past, decided and needed. Turning around, she asked the children to unbuckle their seatbelts and very slowly and quietly, so those are my words in quotations, exit the car. Laura walked, simple past, softly around to the passenger side door and took, simple past irregular, a terrified Freya gently out of her seat. She stood, irregular simple past, with the girls a few yards from the turkeys as they swiftly completed their driveway crossing. Once Freya saw, simple past, the birds had, simple past, no interest in her and were in fact running, away from her howls. So they were running. That's something that takes a few minutes. It's a process. They were running away from her howls, which is another word for screams. She calmed, simple past, down. She sensed no fear coming from her sisters or her mother. She became, irregular simple past, quiet. All three girls were, and that also should be green because that's simple past of the verb to be. All three girls were mesmerized. They were amazed. They had never seen. So had seen is my verb. I have had, the past tense of have, and then the past participle. See, saw, seen. So this would be the past perfect. So this is something that happens before. Or in this case, it's never happened before. All three girls were mesmerized. Why? Because they had never seen in the past before wild turkeys. And the word before helps us understand. They had never seen. When? Before this. All right, last page. In Traverse City, they had lived, again, had, and the past participle, which is regular ed, had plus past participle. So in Traverse City, they had lived. So remember, they moved. Right now, they live in West Michigan. So we're talking about before that, when they lived in Traverse City. They had lived on a main road. By moving to West Michigan, they had swapped. So when they moved, they swapped the black bears that we have in Traverse City for turkeys and deer. Laura was, simple past, grateful that the creatures were, simple past, the harmless birds and not a herd of deer, which could have done I missed one, could have done, all right, this is could plus present perfect, could have done great damage to the vehicle by injuring both humans and animals alike. A week before, she had encountered a deer in this exact spot on the driveway. Very dangerous. She also thought, back to simple past, about how strongly some children respond to new experiences and how adults need to remember to respond with patience and compassion even when it is inconvenient. The children were late for school. Simple past. Now I'm getting to the end of my story. This is when I'm going to explain the thesis or the lesson or the learning or the consequences, the so what, right? We write a story not just to tell about an experience, but to express some kind of meaning. The children were late for school. She, Laura, had been hoping, this is our one example of card, past perfect continuous or past perfect progressive. So it's similar to the past perfect, but it uses an ing verb to show that something was ongoing. So it's background information, something that happened before something else, but it's something usually that isn't just done and over, like eating a sandwich. It's something that continues in the past. So she had been hoping for a smooth and uneventful morning. But for once, she wasn't frustrated or cranky, because I get frustrated and cranky when we're late for school, and I have to sign my kids in late, because it's unnecessary. When she signed them in on the clipboard in the office, she simply wrote, and this is all simple past, turkeys, in the reason for tardy column. And she smiled at the memory they had made together. So when she was in the office, she smiled. Find my card here. She was in the office, she smiled, because why? Before that morning earlier, they had made a memory together. So Laura hopes that the children will remember the happy memory of seeing the turkey. They were mesmerized, and they have a greater appreciation for nature and the natural world. And then they have a memory of their childhood, and that in the future Freya won't be afraid of new things, especially animals that she encountered. So, this is an example of what your essay is going to look like. It does not have to be this long, but those are the main parts. You need the introduction, for the setting, and the characters, and then you need, here's my setting and characters. Okay, so remember, you introduce your characters and the setting, where, what, when, why, how, and then you're going to move into explaining the conflict, which could be a conflict, an argument between people, or it could be a natural thing that happens. It could be a psychological problem, a difficulty, a decision you have to make, and then actions, and then at the end, you're going to talk about the thesis or the lesson or the learning. I cannot wait to read your essays. Good luck, everybody.